The photograph trembled in Marcus Chen's hands as morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse. His breath caught, not from the image itself, but from what it represented. 24 hours ago, he'd been a man who measured success in quarterly reports and market shares. Now, holding this faded picture and a handwritten note that simply read, "Goodbye," he realized he'd just experienced the most transformative night of his 42 years. Marcus had built an empire from nothing. Chen Technologies had made him a billionaire before he turned 35, but somewhere between the board meetings and champagne toasts, he'd forgotten what it felt like to be truly human. His penthouse was a monument to success, cold, pristine, and utterly lonely. He worked 16-hour days, ate meals prepared by his private chef without tasting them, and couldn't remember the last time he'd had a conversation that didn't revolve around profit margins. Yesterday's late-night drive had been different. His Bentley had broken down on a quiet suburban street, a malfunction so rare his mechanic would later call it a 1 in a million occurrence. Standing in the drizzling rain, designer suit soaking through, Marcus had felt more helpless than he had in decades. His phone was dead, and for once, money couldn't immediately solve his problem. That's when Daniel appeared. "Hey, you need some help." The voice had come from a man in his mid-30s, wearing a grocery store uniform and carrying a backpack. Daniel's smile was genuine, the kind Marcus rarely encountered in his world of calculated networking. "My car just died," Marcus had admitted, feeling oddly vulnerable. "I'm waiting for a tow truck, but I can't even call them." "Come on," Daniel had said without hesitation. "My place is just around the corner. You can dry off, charge your phone, whatever you need." Marcus's first instinct had been to refuse. Stranger danger, his security team's warnings, the endless caution that came with being worth billions, it all screamed at him to decline. But something in Daniel's eyes, a warmth that seemed to radiate despite the cold rain, made him nod. Daniel's apartment was a tiny two-bedroom on the third floor of an aging building. The paint was chipped, the furniture was secondhand, but the moment Marcus stepped inside, he felt something his penthouse had never provided, a home. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A worn sofa held mismatched pillows. The air smelled like cinnamon and something baking. "Sorry about the mess," Daniel had said, though the place was tidier than most luxury hotels Marcus frequented. "My daughter Emma's at my mom's tonight. She's 8, and she's my whole world." As Marcus charged his phone, Daniel had offered him coffee and leftover homemade lasagna. They'd started talking, and hours had evaporated like morning mist. Daniel worked 2 jobs, the grocery store during the day, online tutoring at night, ever since his wife Sarah had died from cancer 3 years ago. He spoke about her with such love that Marcus felt his own eyes sting. "The medical bills wiped us out," Daniel had explained without bitterness. "I sold everything we had to give her a chance. It wasn't enough, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat." Some things matter more than money. Marcus had sat in stunned silence. Here was a man who had lost everything, who worked himself to exhaustion just to keep a roof over his daughter's head, and yet he'd opened his home to a stranger without a second thought. "Emma wants to be a doctor," Daniel had continued, showing Marcus photos on his cracked phone screen. A little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's smile beamed back at him. "She says she wants to help people the way the doctors tried to help her mom. I'm saving every penny for her education, even if it means we eat ramen some nights." They'd talked until 3 in the morning. Daniel shared stories about Emma's soccer games, school plays, and how she'd helped him survive the darkest days after Sarah's death. Marcus found himself opening up in ways he hadn't in years, talking about the loneliness of success, the hollow feeling of achieving everything and feeling nothing. "You know what Sarah used to say?" Daniel had asked, his voice soft. "She said people aren't remembered for what they accumulate, but for what they give away. Not just money, time, kindness, presence. The stuff that actually costs you something." Those words had hit Marcus like a physical force. Around 4 in the morning, exhausted, Daniel had shown Marcus to Emma's room. He'd insisted Marcus take his bed, but Marcus had refused. The small room was painted pink, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and shelves lined with library books. Marcus had lain in the narrow bed, staring at those stars, and felt something crack open in his chest. He'd left before dawn, called a car service, and left an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note thanking Daniel for his hospitality. He'd thought it generous at the time. Now, back in his penthouse, Marcus stared at what Daniel had left for him in return. The photograph was old, edges soft with handling. It showed a young couple, Daniel and Sarah, on their wedding day. They were laughing, foreheads pressed together, completely in love. Behind them stood a handwritten note in different handwriting, Sarah's, he guessed. Dear future friend, it read. If you're reading this, my Daniel has helped you when you needed it most. That's who he is. Please don't repay kindness with money, it would break his heart. He doesn't need charity, he needs hope. If you really want to help, be the kind of person who helps the next stranger you meet. That's how we change the world, one act of kindness at a time. And if you can, maybe check in on my guys sometimes. They're going to need friends when I'm gone. Love, Sarah. Below it, in Daniel's handwriting, Marcus, you seem like a good man who forgot what that means. I can't accept your check. I helped you because it was right, not for a reward. But I'm returning Sarah's picture and note. She'd written dozens of these before she died, putting them in books and jackets, hoping to spread kindness after she was gone. I think she'd want you to have this one. Whatever you're searching for, I hope you find it. Take care, Daniel. Marcus sat down hard, the leather chair suddenly feeling like a throne in an empty kingdom. Daniel had returned $50,000 because it violated his principles. He'd given Marcus something infinitely more valuable instead, a reminder of what truly mattered. The billionaire looked around his penthouse with new eyes. Every expensive piece, every symbol of success, suddenly seemed like a monument to fear. He'd been so afraid of vulnerability, of loss, of being ordinary, that he'd built walls money couldn't breach. He picked up his phone and made the first of many calls that would change his life. Not to his accountant or lawyer, but to Daniel. Hello. Daniel's tired voice answered. It's Marcus. I got your note. And I need to tell you something. You and Emma are going to have a friend who checks in on you. Not a benefactor, not a charity case. A friend. If you'll have me. There was a pause, then Daniel's warm laugh. We could use one of those. Marcus smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. And Daniel, I'm setting up a foundation. In Sarah's name. To help families facing medical crises. But I'm going to need someone who understands what that really means to help run it. Someone who knows that kindness isn't a transaction. That photograph now sits on Marcus Chen's desk, not in his penthouse, he sold that, but in his new office at the Sarah Mitchell Foundation. He sees Daniel and Emma regularly. He's learned to coach Emma's soccer team, to show up for school plays, to measure success in hugs instead of zeros. The note saying goodbye hadn't been an ending at all. It had been an invitation to finally start living.